All right, so what we're going to start doing is we're going to start clearing away this area right here. I'm going to leave this because it's the air conditioning. Other than that, I'm going to take all these hoses loose. I'll probably take this reservoir. I'm going to try it without the reservoir pipe because it's oil and I don't want to, I'm trying not to make the biggest mess as I can, but that may have to come off right there and I may have to just pull it back and pull this off. But I'm going to try it without. We'll try getting this one, get the motor mount brackets off, and then we'll see how clear we can get. But I know these brackets have to come off, the motor mount brackets. I'll pull that off in a minute and I'll show you exactly what those are. What you're looking at is you've got some 12 millimeters, you've got 14s here. Looks like a combination. There's 4 here and there's a couple here on the back. There's several. There should be a ground also in here somewhere. I got to find it. But everything starts with this little bracket right here, so it looks like 12s and 14s. But I'll tell you as I go along, and then we'll see what it takes to start getting this stuff. Well, we got to clear this out so we can get down in here and get this cover off. Okay, the two right connecting the motor mount, the side bracket with the motor mount bracket, the two there are 14s. And they are seriously on there. I'd say they're, if I remember the torque spec right, they're in foot-pounds. So I'm going to have to grab a bigger socket or breaker bar real quick. And if you don't have a breaker bar, you might as well find you one, because there's going to be a lot of these bolts that are very tough. Once you break them loose, they're really not a lot of trouble after that. But you're definitely going to have something pretty hefty. This is a single bracket. I'll pull it out and show it to you. That crosses over between the motor mount and the side of the engine. Okay, so there's your 2 bolts. There's your side bracket right there. And if I were you, I would take a good picture of everything, because you're going to need it. You're going to need to know where everything goes back. So I would definitely do that. I lay my stuff out. I take video of it, take pictures of it, and then I lay the stuff out. So on the side of that is a 12 millimeter. So I'm grabbing that right now. And again, you're probably going to need a breaker bar for it. And on this one, you might even need a swivel. We'll try it without it first. 2 bolts. Yep, it's 12. Not near as hard as those 14s. Okay, there's the side mount, mounts just like that, and that little crossover mount mounts there and then hits the top of the motor mount. Before I go any further, might as well go ahead and take the reservoir off for the antifreeze, because it's going to be right in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop that off real quick and pull the hoses back, and then I'll be right back. These bolts on the tank are 10 millimeter, and they're not on there very tight at all. I think there's just 3 of them on here. There might be one down on the bottom. No, I don't remember. We'll check it in a minute. I just pulled the hose out to the side. It just had a little snap clamp on the top of it. You can get it off with a pair of pliers. Three bolts, and then you got the hose. If you've already drained it, then you can just take that hose right off right here on the snap, or you can pull it underneath. I'm just going to take it off because I'm not going to mess with it. Might be a little residual water in there too. And if these haven't been off in a while, you have to take a screwdriver, pry them off. Actually came off pretty easy. Get that out of the way. Make sure you keep your nuts and everything together with every piece. I always line mine up on the side of the garage. That way when you're ready to put it back on, you don't have any problem. Let's see what I want to do with that hose. I think I'll just put it right in underneath here. Just like that. I think that's going to give me plenty of room. Okay, now let me pull this over. Show you a couple things here. Okay, so this is where the side bracket was on right here, and the little bracket was over the top of that. Now if you look right here, you've got a couple holding this onto the cover, that holds the cover on. Okay, there's a couple here that's got to come off. They're 12s. There's ground that's got to come off. Then there's 4 bolts right on that engine mount. Now before you loosen any of those up, you got to go underneath and put a block underneath the oil pan. So I've got this cleared out over here pretty well, so you can see it right there. Okay, so you can see right here, there's your flywheel, and we're going to have to take the belt off, and then if you look right in there, you'll see there's the bottom of the oil pan, which is right there where my finger is. Okay, I'm going to put a block underneath that, and I'm going to jack that block up with a regular floor jack, take the pressure off of that motor mount. And I'm also going to mark this flywheel so that we know the position of the flywheel while I'm at it. And I'm going to get those 2 things done, and then we'll be ready to go ahead and start taking the motor mount up on top. We still got some work to do up on top, so we want to go ahead and get everything done on top we can before we come down here. And then we'll be up and down on this pretty regular. You can see there's the timing covers bolts right here, several of them down the bottom. There's a total of, I believe there's 22, if I remember right. So there's a slew of them on the bottom, slew of them on the top. So we're going to be working back and forth between the bottom and the top. So I'm going to go ahead and get the jack put in place with a block. Use a block of wood and a good floor jack, and just take the weight off of that. Just give you a quick shot. That's how I've got it set up. Got a block on it. Just taking the weight off. That's all you want to do. You don't have to kill anything, but just make sure you get the weight off of it and just leave it there. Leave it out of the way because you're going to be doing a lot of work here. Okay, this is about the best angle I'm going to be able to get on my camera. So if you got a couple of extensions, now's a good time to have them together, because these are kind of hard to get at. 12s. Once you break them, there's really no problem after that. It's just a cover. These are a couple pretty long bolts. Don't forget to take the ground cable off. On the Ford Edge, that ground cable is over on the side of the engine and not the motor mount. Okay, got that off. Stack it up over here. There are subtle differences between the Mazda and the Edge, but it's not too bad. And this should just come right off. It's just the cap, and this is you can just leave this on tack. There's no need to take it off because we're going to take the motor mount loose there, and should be able to just pull it right off. Get that ground off. And that ground's a different size. It's a 10 millimeter. Just leave that loose and don't forget that. Just put it back in there. Okay, so now we got 4 14s. It's got to be a deep well, and you definitely have to have a breaker bar for it. Not too awful bad, actually. I think they're, I don't know, I can't remember the foot-pounds, but I'll give them to you when I get ready to put them back on. Okay, this motor mount doesn't slip off like some of the others that I'm used to. It's actually attached to it, so the only way to get it off is to go ahead and knock these 18s off. There's 3 very large 18s that are going to take a full-size ratchet. I gotta check that size. I'm not sure if that's an 18. they're 17s. So don't put an 18 on it and ruin it. Okay, after you bust those 3 17s with a breaker bar, then you're good. And you can just go ahead and take your regular socket and remove them. There's only 3 of them, but they are big and they are on there. They're probably on there with 150 foot-pound probably, I'm guessing. Okay, the 3 bolts are identical, so you don't have to worry about that. You can take them out and not worry about how you put them back in. And then it should be loose and we should just be able to lift it straight up. Well, I got the little clamp to take off as well. Yeah, that's going to do it. So I got to take this little clamp off. Okay, got that little clamp out there. See if I can get a little more light in there. Show you. I had to take my light off to get my camera in there. But you can see bolts are loose. The little clamp is loose, and the one on the back's loose. Should just be able to pull it up now. That's a little oil jet for the oil that goes in there. Alright, and there it is. That's your motor mount out. Make sure you put your bolts all together with it. You got the 4 and the 3 very large ones. Okay, so that gave us a whole lot of room then. Once we got that out, that gave us a whole bunch of room. Now this bracket as well has got to come off, and it's got I believe it's 2 bolts. They're 2 14s, one on each side. So that's got to come off so that we can get the bracket itself off. And it's best to take that off from the top. There's not a lot of room down there on the bottom. Once we get that one off, pull around. I'll pull off over here on the side so you can see it. Once we get that one off, right there, then that'll give us a pretty good access to the timing cover. And then we'll go ahead and the tensioner, we're going to have to take that tensioner off right there. And I'll get you a better picture of that tensioner too. That tension, the belt's going to have to come off, tensioner's going to have to come off, then the harmonic balancer's going to have to come off. So that's a pretty good place to stop for now, and I will be back shortly. Alright, I'm back. There were 3 bolts. There were 1 on each side, and there's 1 down on the bottom for this last engine mount. So to get that, we're going to have to go ahead and start down on the bottom. So before I do that, I'm going to go and I'm going to put a 3/8 in there. I'm going to go ahead and take the drive belt off. Then I'm going to go ahead and take that tensioner out. I think it's held on with 3 8mm bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and take the fan belt off, go ahead and take the tensioner off. Then I'm going to go down on the bottom, and then we'll start working on our way up until we can get back to this this bracket, because we got to get this mount off before we can get to the timing cover. So I've got a little work to do, and I will be back. Alright, let me give you a little spoiler alert for taking off the belt. You can't use a regular breaker bar on it because there isn't enough space in between where the tensioner is. So you have to have the actual belt removal tool, which is this tool right here, or you'll have to figure out some other way to get into that 3/8. Okay, but to get this serpentine belt off, you've got to have something about this flat. And if you put a regular breaker bar on there, you can't get it in there. It hits on the side of the body. So just a spoiler alert right there. Be ready for that when you get ready to take the belt off. Okay, as I continue to get things ready underneath here, I see in here, that's the belt for the power steering. There is no adjustment there for getting that belt off. It's a stretch belt, so that means you have to have a little tool to put it back on, or you have to use zip ties. I'm taking this off anyway, so I'm sure it'll come off when I take that off. But if you need to replace that, then go ahead and buy another one. And then either you can watch 5 videos on how to do that without the little tool, but I actually have the little tool that slips that back on. But anyway, there is no adjustments for that, so don't look, because you'll waste a lot of time like I did. So the idler in underneath here is where I'm going next, and so I can't quite get to all 3 of those number 8s, so now I got to go ahead and work this off. So that's where I'm going to focus in on next. I'm going to mark this, and then I'm going to go ahead and take her off. Okay, let me explain about this harmonic balancer, because it's not as easy as everybody makes out on the videos. Okay, this is the bolt right here. I believe it's an 18. Okay, take that off with an impact wrench. Okay, leave the belt on, hit that with an impact wrench. If you don't have one, go borrow one. Okay, hit that with an impact wrench. Don't try to take it off with a regular wrench. It's just gonna twist the serpentine belt. Okay, that belt I was telling you about, that's this belt, and I ended up having to cut that belt off. It wouldn't come off when I came off with a harmonic balancer. So anyway, you take this bolt out, and then you got to pull this harmonic balancer out. See, there's little notches right here. There's 3 notches, and it takes a 3 clamp, and I'll show you what the clamp looks like. This is what the clamp looks like right here. Now this is one I bought at Harbor Freight, and it's a three set, and I took this. Nothing fits this because this harmonic balancer doesn't have a lot of clearance in here. So I took this and I took a grinder and I ground it down. You see the end of it's ground off, and one side of each one of these, and then that fit down in here like that, so that you could use that. So if you think you're going to go get you know, just a 3-prong and you're going to pull it out, it won't work. Okay, so just go to Harbor Freight, buy a cheap set. I don't even think they're $10 or $15, and then take a grinder, grind that down. That way you can get in here and you can grab that. Go ahead and cut that off, because you got to have it. You got to cut that belt off anyway. Got to replace it anyway. And then when you go to put it back on, use it. This is the tool you use to put that belt back on with. Or I saw some videos where you can use some plastic zip ties to do it with. So anyway, I've got that cut off. I used this socket as well, and what I did is I took that off, and then I put the bolt back in like that, and the bolt will actually fit through there. And then then I put this socket over the top of it, and then that's what I pulled with the puller. And that seemed to work, give me all the right dimensions, and I was able to get that off. Okay, so I'm saving you some time, because it's nothing's easy with this, and if you're, you know, make sure you got plenty of patience, because you're going to need it. See, now there it is, and it's off. I got it marked. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and get underneath there and get the tensioner off, because there was a bolt on the bottom of the tensioner. So I'm going to get the tensioner out of there. They're 8mm. I'm going to take that tensioner off, from one from the bottom, a couple from the top, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish that last bolt on the engine mount. And then when I do that, we should have everything cleared off. We'll be able to take the timing cover off. So we'll be back. Okay, here's the drive belt tensioner. It's out. 3 bolts. They're 8mm. You can get them out with a small ratchet. That's what I used right there. When you put them back in, though, you're going to need to do it with a small torque wrench. So if you don't have one, you need to rent one. Okay, so there it is. It's out. And I'm getting more and more room in here all the time, as you can see. So now all I got to do is 1 bolt underneath for this engine mount, and then I think I'll have to check again, but I believe then we'll be ready to start taking the bolts out for the timing cover. So I'll be back. Okay, Here's the motor mount out. You've got one short bolt on the back side, two long bolts. This bottom bolt has to be taken, this has to be taken out from the bottom. Can't reach it from the top. You can get this one out, you can get this one out. This one you have to do it underneath, and when you get it pulled out, you have to lower the engine down. You've got a block underneath that engine oil pan to keep the engine up. You need to lower that down to get this last bolt out. Okay, so that's out. Now let's see what we got. Now we got a lot of room to actually get to the bolts. I'm going to start getting the actual timing cover bolts out now. So we'll be back shortly. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and start taking the bolts out for the timing cover. And you can start on the top or you can start on the bottom. It doesn't really matter. They've all got to come out. I'm going to go ahead and start here on the top, work these all out, and then work my way around. I don't believe there's any on the inside underneath here until you get further on down. And I may have to take one or two of the bolts out of that power steering pump. I'm not sure yet. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start here on the top, and then I'll work my way down and I'll show you as I go. Okay, I started taking the bolts off. I got all of the 6 bolts that are here, 3 on each side, and these bolts are this size right here. It's probably 2.5 inches. All of them are 10 millimeter. When I went to the bottom though, the bolt size changed. So the bolt size went from this longer bolt to a shorter bolt. And all the bolts on the bottom, all the way around, around the power steering pump, and all of them are this size. So you've got 2 size bolts. You need to be aware of it. The 6 that go on the top V, and the rest of them are the shorter bolts. And there's 1 bolt underneath that would not come off, and I will show you that bolt right now so you can see it. That means we're going to have to take the power steering pump loose. Okay, so this is a look at the bottom of the timing chain cover, and you've got a total, I believe the total is 25 bolts. I've actually got my manual picture of it, so I'll try to post that along with the video. But anyway, I've got all of these loose, and then when I got to the ones around the power steering, you can see that 1 bolt there. That 1 bolt is behind the power steering pulley, so there was no way to get to that bolt without taking the power steering pump at least loose. And so if I'm going to get that deep into it, then I'm going to go ahead and change the power steering pump, which is about $110 from Amazon. And if you're in this deep, and you know my vehicle has 185,000 miles on it, then you need to go ahead and change that out, because it would be a real shame if you did this whole project and then didn't change that out and then it went bad. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get that on order, and I'll make sure I have it, and I'm going to swap it out. But I've got to go ahead and loosen that power steering pump, and it is 3 12 millimeter bolts that hold that on. They hold it on from the back side, and the only way you can get to it that I know of is from the top. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start working on that, and then I will be back. Okay, there's the printed page out of my manual for the bolt pattern on the timing cover. I believe it's 25 bolts total. I don't know why it's off, but that's what it is. Anyway, those bolt numbers are the order you want to take them off or put them back on. So there that is, so you can have that. And that's the overall schematic for the all the timing part covers. That's got everything on it. Timing parts, that's got the front harmonic balancer, that's got the motor mount, that's everything. Valve covers, that's the whole deal there. And here's the one printed off for the power steering pump, and the hosing that comes up, all the connectors, everything right into the reservoir. I already took the reservoir off earlier, so there's a look at the 3 bolts that hold it on and where they hook onto the side of the engine. Okay, here's the back side of the new pump. If you're looking at the pump as it's on the side of the engine, it would look just about like this. Okay, that red cap one would be about at that angle. Okay, and it would be set in like that. If you look on the back, you've got 3 bolts that got to come out. 1 bolt is right here. These are all number 12s. These are the bolts. Okay, you got 1 right here, like that. Got 1 right behind it, right there. And then 1 on the top that's easy to get to, right there. Okay, so these 2 on the bottom, they're not going to be easy. Okay, and there's not a lot of room to work, so I recommend you get you a good mirror like this one, and you have plenty of light so that you can get in there and fish those 3 bolts. So 1, 2 on the bottom, 1 on the top. Make sure you got a good 12 socket millimeters. You're going to have some swivels and different things to get this out. It is not a piece of cake, but that's what it looks like. So those are the 3 bolts that have to come out. I think you can leave everything on it as far as the hosing and stuff, because you can work that, you know, as you get it out. I'll update in a few minutes once I get the bolts out. Okay, after you get those 3 bolts out, they're here, here, and here. Okay, you can leave this 1 low pressure hose on, but the high pressure hose is right here. Leave 1 of those in, whichever one's the easiest one, probably this one right here. That's probably the easiest one to be left in. Leave that in until you take that high pressure out. Okay, you need to break that loose. It's I think it's a 17. Yeah, it's a 17 millimeter, and it goes right here. Okay, and that's got to come out. And I have that somewhere. Anyway, it's a high pressure fitting with a breather hole in it. And then you see here you got your sensor. That's going to have to change out. Mine already has a pulley on it, but you're going to have to change the sensor out. Then you're going to have to reattach the high pressure. And in your kit, you'll get new copper rings and the seals. Those 1 copper ring, 2 copper rings, 1 on each side of that pressure. That here it is, right here. Okay, you'll have to have new copper rings for that. You'll have to have a new O-ring seal for this. So that has to be transferred over to the new one. All right, and I'll get into that when I start putting it back together again, but for now that's it. And then you'll have to transfer the hose, okay, of course, unless you want to buy a new one, which is really nothing wrong with that one. I probably will change that sensor out because I don't want to have to change it out later. It would be a bear. I'm going to see how much it is. So anyway, I've got that done. I've got it out. I went ahead and took all my bolts out that I couldn't reach before. So now I've got everything ready to go. I put my push-offs in, which are right here and here. There's 2 on the bottom, right there and right there, and there's also a couple on the side, but I don't usually have to use those, but if I have to, I will. So go through, double check, make sure you've got every one of your bolts out, and then I would use the bottom push-offs and the top push-offs for sure. And just do that nice and easy. But I'm telling you, if you don't have every one of those bolts out, and you better count them up, you're going to have a problem. And you could even break that timing cover, which is a big bill. So before you start pushing that off, make sure you've got every single bolt. Count them up, make sure you got them all off. So I'm going to go ahead and press this off real easy, and I'll be back. Okay. Here is the ultimate result, getting that timing chain cover off, and it was in pretty good shape. Actually, just make sure you get every bolt out. I had one hid underneath this corner right up in here, and so when I started pushing out, it didn't want to come out, and then I found it and removed it. So the push out points, there's one right here, there's one over here I didn't need it. I pushed out from the top, those two, and I pushed out from the bottom on these two. So I used a total of 5 to push it out, and it came off with really no issue. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the chain now and see what we got there. And there we go. There's the water pump, access to the water pump, all the guides, and the chains. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start taking off the cam adjusters first, and then I'll work on the order for you for the timing chain to get the timing chain off, and then we'll get to the water pump. So that's a good place to stop. So I will be back later. We'll keep on going.